Hey guys, this is Shelby here with Warwick County Soil and Water Conservation District. Thanks for joining us for week 3 of our quarantine conservation series. We have today, of course, on Mondays, our invasive species day. Today we're going to do it a little differently than before, where we talk about the impact of invasive species as a whole rather than a specific invasive species itself. So we actually have a few questions that I'll post throughout the video, and I am simply going to answer them for you guys. Feel free to comment if you have any more questions, or you're always welcome to contact us. Hope you guys enjoy! Weeds are a funny thing. The definition of a weed is basically a plant growing where you don't want it to. So dandelions are native plants actually, but if it's growing in your garden bed and you don't want it there, then it's a weed. So invasive species are weeds, but not all weeds are invasive species. So to cover the definition of an invasive species again, it is an organism. So in our case, we're going to talk about mostly plants. So a plant that is causing harm or damage to its environment that it is not native in. So 2 factors basically. 1, it's in an area that it's not native to, and 2, it is causing harm or damage to its environment. It can cause harm in so many different ways that it's not just one specific way. But the overall harm that it causes typically is it is throwing a wrench in the ecosystem that has been developing for years and years and years and years. So the problem with an invasive species being thrown into the mix is that it does throw off the ecosystem balance that has worked so hard to try to balance each other out. So let's talk about this February. Late February, you might have noticed maybe some things that were already greening up, which is very crazy. We still get snow, it's still pretty cold, but we do have those occasional warm spells. And the invasive species seem to have been able to have a longer growing season. So what I mean by that is they green out first and before the other native species, and then they are greener longer in the cooler seasons. So typically you can see invasive species green from sometimes late February all the way to late November. And when a plant is green, it is conducting photosynthesis in its system, and when that is happening, it is producing energy and has the capability of growing more. So a lot of people say that invasive species grow faster and bigger than the native plants, which is true, but it's mostly because they have such a longer growing season and it is able to get bigger. So it doesn't always have to have a faster growing rate. It just has a longer one and really benefits outcompeting the native plants. The problem with them growing faster or bigger is that it's going to choke out all of the other space that could have been left for the native species. So if there's no space for the native species to grow, they're just not going to be able to grow. And that's the case for a lot of our ephemeral wildflowers, is because they're trying to grow right now, but a lot of our invasive species, especially the shrubs, are already leafed out. And ephemeral wildflowers only grow whenever the canopy has not developed in a forest. So if it's not getting that sunlight that it was expecting to, because none of our native trees are greened out, but our invasive species are, there is no light getting down to the forest floor for those ephemeral wildflowers to grow and do its thing before it goes back into the ground. Then the other way that they can cause damage is for the wildlife itself. Invasive species are not the most beneficial resource for our wildlife. A lot of them do have pretty good crude protein, but the problem is our native animals typically like to stick to what they know, and they're not going to eat the invasive species. So they are going to keep eating the native species that are, first of all, already few and far between because of the lesser amount of space given by the invasive species, and now they're getting overgrazed because there was already fewer of them than there were in the previous years. So it's a super great question, and I hope that I can answer it well and answer it fully. But the problem with the survival of the fittest idea and letting the invasives, or considering them the fittest, is because they didn't co-evolve with this natural ecosystem. That's how survival of the fittest works, is because all of these organisms co-evolved together, and that's how the survival of the fittest worked. What's up, guys? Take number 2. I found some better answers for these questions today as opposed to when I recorded it yesterday. So sorry for the change of scenery. But to answer this question, yes, they are spreading. They may not be spreading in your yard, but we do mow our yards, and it's very hard to have trees or bushes or anything grow above 3 inches anyways. The other thing is to think about how some trees or plants spread their seeds, and a lot of the times it's through wind or by being carried by an animal. So that means the range in which they can be dispersed is significantly larger. So your Bradford pear in your tree might be a contributor to the wild grown ones near in a forest near you. The answer is going to be different for everybody, but I just want to encourage you that you are doing something about it just by watching this video, and we really, really appreciate it. Education and awareness is a huge deal and a big part of changing the way we think about things. So thank you so much for that. The other ways is prevention. You can prevent invasive species from growing by planting native things or not buying invasive species in the first place. And then the other ways, or the other way, is reduction. So getting rid of the invasive species that are here. Not as fun, obviously, but if it is something you're interested in or wondering how to get rid of them, feel free to contact us. We do have a great local invasive species group. It's called WISP, Warwick Invasive Species Partnership. If you would like to know any more information about that, we can get you in the hands of Megan Ritterskamp, and she can help you out from there. That's all I have for you guys today. If you have any more questions about invasive species or want to get involved, feel free to comment, message us, email us, call us, whatever you want to do. We really appreciate you guys sticking with us for our conservation or quarantine conservation series, and hope it's a little bit of education for you guys. Thanks.